What's up, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this, I want to give you guys a very quick update about Tesla and the markets. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice. Anyways, when you look at Tesla stock, as you guys could tell, as we hit the low 350s, we do tend to reject a bit. But as we hit these lower 330s, we do see a lot of buyers that try to defend Tesla right here, especially around 330 flat. So that's the range Tesla's been in for the last couple of weeks. And the question is, what's going to happen from this point on? Well, I want to note that there is some tough resistance right here at 350. And with all the news coming out about Elon Musk getting this new, big pay package, at least he's being proposed a big one. That's very important news. This has helped Tesla bounce to some extent. And at the same time, there's a lot of uncertainty about President Trump's tariffs. Right now, President Trump and his team are looking for their options to try to keep the tariffs, even if the Supreme Court does end up ruling against them. They're trying to be prepared for anything. So that's what they're saying, at least so far. There is some uncertainty about that. And when it comes to tomorrow, it's going to be Monday, September 8th. There's not really much data coming out. We just have a couple of bill auctions at 11:30 a.m. So at 11 a.m., we have consumer inflationary expectations. At 11:30 a.m., we just have some bill auctions. That's pretty much it for tomorrow. But I do want to mention that there is a tough resistance up here between 350 and 355. Now, if Tesla is very strong, and if we manage to hold above 355 tomorrow, if we hold above 355, we're looking for 358 as our target. Then eventually we could be pushing for like the 365 area above that. But if Tesla fails and we can't hold above 347, there's going to be a risk of us returning back down towards this resistance becoming support at 343 and then all the way back down to 340, which is where our 20 EMA happens to be. Well, what you'll see is that there were many times where Tesla pushes to like the 350s and we just reject. For the last 3 months, every time we hit the 350s, we've rejected. So I do want to warn you to be very careful. Also, when you look at the current charts, there is a risk of some downside. So I would not be surprised if Tesla sort of like pushes a bit, retests this 347 area, and then it might just consolidate between 347 and 350. And then we'll see if we could break out higher or not. But I do think there's going to be some consolidation right here in the 350s for now. Between this 355 and 347 area, I think we're going to see some sideways price action. And then we're going to see if Tesla could break out higher or not after that. But this, of course, depends on a lot of different factors. Typically, Tesla does well in the month of September, but October tends to be the most bearish month for Tesla historically. So keep all of that in mind. We're going to see how Tesla shuffles around here and if we could get some kind of breakout or not. When it comes to SPY, we got this rejection so far. I need to see SPY hold above 647 to continue to bounce. If we don't, the 4 hours actually suggest that what might happen is we consolidate and start to dip a bit to like 643.5 to 642. And then once we hit the support in the lower 640s, we could be looking for another bounce attempt. And we're going to see if we can make another high or not from there. We're going to be watching for a move just like this. But I do think there is going to be a risk of some downside. We might consolidate and see a little bit of a dip to like the lower 640s before we attempt to bounce again on SPY. That's the most likely possibility. We need to hold above 647 to push for 650. But if we lose 644, we're looking for a dump to 642 to 640. I anticipate some consolidation and dip back down to 642, and we'll see what happens after that. But look for a small pullback to the low 640s, and we'll see how it goes as time goes on. For the QQQ, if we break past 578, we're going to be looking more bullish. But if we lose 571, we're going to be turning back down. I anticipate there might be some consolidation here. Then we could be dipping back down to about 571. And we'll see if we bounce or not off that area. I do think this might dip just a little bit looking at the way we closed on Friday. We might be dipping back down to like the low 570s. So watch to see if we could bounce from there as buyers try to defend. On the IWM, we have a bearish divergence. We're going to see if we could continue to push for the 240 from here. We might retest 235 tomorrow and consolidate before we potentially push back up to about 240. That's most likely what's going to happen. ES is holding up nicely, but be a little bit careful because we're still technically in this wedge. I would not be surprised if ES retests 64.72 or so before it tries to bounce. Then we're going to see if we could go higher or not from here. But be careful as we're forming some kind of wedge before we potentially dip lower. On NQ, it looks like it wants to bounce just a little bit. Might retest this low before it tries to bounce again. And then we're going to see if we could take out the high. If we don't, we're eventually going to see some kind of pullback in September, most likely, as we have a head and shoulders like pattern. So look at the pattern. We might bounce a little bit, consolidate before we start dipping next week. So be very, very careful. Bitcoin kind of flat right now. It's trying to bounce a little bit. It might push just a bit for about 12,000. Then we're going to see if this rejects and turns back down below 109,000 or not. And for Tesla, like I said before, there might be some consolidation between 355 and 347. We might push, dip, and just kind of trade sideways like this before it tries to break out later on in either the upside or downside direction. But look for some sideways price action first before an attempt to break out. Nvidia is showing some weakness, especially because President Trump is threatening higher tariffs on semiconductors. So we're going to see if we get a temporary bounce on Nvidia to retest 169, then consolidate. Can we break out higher from there? Do we just consolidate and eventually start dipping lower? So you want to be very careful. On Apple, we're technically trying to push on an uptrend, but here's the thing. We're also favoring some consolidation and a slight rising wedge. So it might push a little higher for the low 240s and consolidate before this potentially starts to dip lower for 236. But I see a sideways price action between the low 240s and 236. For a few more tickers, I'm going to be kind of quick with this one. Netflix made retest 233 to 1233 to 1224, and then we'll see if we bounce off that or not. Look for some downside. Even MSTR is showing a little bit of weakness. We might be retesting the lows right here around 318 before we try to bounce. Celsius may also be dipping back down to 57.5. Supermicro showing a little bit of weakness unless we get back above 41. We're still favoring a retest of like the 39.5 or so area and some consolidation. So the downside risk is there. Palantir is rejecting off resistance, so we're going to see if it retests 155 and starts dipping back down to like the low 150s. For Rivian, we could be dipping back down to 13.85. SoFi could be once again retesting 25 to 24.7. We'll see if we bounce. AMD is also dipping right here. We're going to see if 150 holds. If not, we could be dipping all the way down towards this gap fill around 146. So there's a risk of some downside on AMD. ARM is also going to be pushing to 141. I think there's a good chance it tries to go a little bit higher. PayPal is going to be at risk of dipping to about 67.5, and we'll see if we bounce. Coinbase might try to bounce for 303.7 if we get a bounce in like our other coin stocks. Amazon's going to likely retest 230 to 228 before it tries to bounce. There's some news that came out that they're going to be ending their Prime Invitee program on October 1st, which is why we're seeing a bit of a dip. Meta may retest 746 before it tries to bounce. And then Google still remains bullish. It may continue to uptrend for closer to 240, and we'll see if it rejects off that. Microsoft, however, dipped quite a bit. It depends. Can we hold 490? There is some support near 488 to 490. We need to bounce near 488 to 490. It is very possible we do. But if we don't, we could be dumping a lot more. So let's see if 490 holds. And then last but not least, the VIX is dipping right here. It might dip a bit before it tries to bounce. This could be indicative that the market might try to bounce a little bit before it tries to reject. So that's why I do see some sideways price action. But then we'll see which way Tesla breaks later on. Tomorrow, look for a small push to 355, a dip back down to 347, some consolidation. And then we're going to see if Tesla could break past 355 later on to try to break out higher. There is potential, but we'll give this some time just to be safe. But nonetheless, guys, I want to thank you all so much for listening. I'm going to make this video kind of quick. I have a bit of a family emergency today, so I have to make this video much quicker than usual and make it very, very fast. Anyways, this is your quick update for now, and be prepared for some consolidation in the markets. There might even be a little bit of downside coming before we try to bounce again. But make sure you watch your levels just to be safe, and we'll see what happens from here. Thank you for listening, and peace out.